If you have your Bibles with you this evening, I invite you to open them to the fourth Gospel. Matthew, Mark, Luke, and then there's John. And tonight we're going to be looking at the 20th chapter of John, specifically verse 24 through 29. Our sermon series on Sunday night is Faces of the Passion. We're looking at Bible characters that lead us into the Passion Week. We're looking at characters of the Passion. And then we're going to be looking at characters after the Passion. So we're going to be looking at a lot of different people that the Bible tells us about. And they're told to us because we're so much like them. As I've said many times before, the characters in the Bible are not supermen and superwomen. They're not Wonder Woman. They're not Green Lantern. They're people just like us, flesh and blood people, who have moments of victory and have moments of defeat. And we're going to learn from them. We're going to learn what they did that was good and we should implement into our life, and we're going to learn what was bad and maybe what we need to subtract from our life. Tonight we're looking at Thomas, the man who went from doubting to shouting. John chapter 20, beginning with verse 24. Now Thomas, called the twin, one of the 12, was not with them when Jesus came. The other disciples therefore said to him, "We have seen the Lord." So he said to them, "Unless I see his hands, the print of the nails, I see in his hands the print of the nails, and put my finger into the print of the nails, and put my hand into his side, I will not believe." And after 8 days his disciples were again inside, and Thomas was with them this time. And Jesus came. He came through the doors that were shut, and stood in the midst of them, and said, "Peace be to you." Then he said to Thomas, "Reach your finger here and look at my hands. Reach your hand here and put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believing." And Thomas answered and said to him, "My Lord, my God." That little word, "my," is a very important word, isn't it? He didn't say, "A Lord, a God." He said, "You're my Lord. You're my God." Possessive. I know you, you know me. I'm yours, you're mine. And Jesus said to him in verse 29, "Thomas, because you have seen me, you have believed. Blessed are those who have not seen and yet have believed." Do you believe in miracles? Do you believe in the greatest miracle in the Bible? Do you believe in the resurrection of Jesus Christ from the dead? Most of you would say your answer's yes. Okay. Others of you might say your answer's no. Okay. Others of you might say we're going to straddle the fence. Your answer's maybe. Okay. Tonight we're going to consider Thomas. He was a disciple of Jesus, and he was a firm maybe at one time in his life when it came to the resurrection of Jesus. In fact, when he was told of the resurrection, he said, "I do not know. Therefore I do not believe." And because of that, Thomas has got a rap sheet among many Christians. We call him a skeptic. We call him a scoffer. We call him an infidel. We call him an unbeliever. Listen to me. He was none of that. He was just a man who had trouble believing the greatest miracle that has ever occurred and will ever occur. The raising of Jesus from the dead. Many in that day perhaps would have said, yes, we believe. But did they really mean it? He said, I don't know. Maybe. I'm not sure. He could have, maybe he didn't. Let me ask you a question. What would you have said then? You know, it's easy to look back and say, I would have done this or I would have done that. But when you're living it in the moment, you don't always have that prerogative. And Thomas didn't have all the facts that we have looking back. Looking back's 2020. But not looking ahead. And sometimes not even looking at the moment. I want you to think with me just a moment. The resurrection of somebody from the dead is a miracle, but it's not a common miracle. And the resurrection of Jesus from the dead was totally unknown to those of that day. He had talked about it with them, but he talked about a lot of things. And I'm sure much of the teaching of Jesus to the disciples when he was alive and with them went in one ear and where? Out the other. They couldn't absorb it all. They weren't sponges. They couldn't absorb it all and hold it in. And so I want us to understand miracles are not common. They weren't common in that day. They're not common in the Old Testament. They're not common in the New Testament, particularly a miracle of the resurrection. And because they're not common, it's difficult for people to wrap their mind and their heart around it, even though they might say they do. Furthermore, let's think about this miracle of the resurrection that Thomas said, I don't believe. Jesus has been dead 3 days. Before his death on the cross, he was brutally scourged. And he hung on the cross for 6 hours. The most excruciating device to ever take a man's life, ever devised by man, was the Roman cross. So you got first of all Jesus' resurrection, which was totally unheard of and uncommon, if not rare in that day. The resurrection of anybody. And then he's been dead. Not a day, not 2 days. He's going into the 4th day. 3 days dead. Nearly beaten to death before he ever was put on the cross, which would ultimately take his life. Then the ladies came, and they put 100 pounds of spices on his body. They didn't have time to do the complete embalming, but they had time to put the spices on. They would put the ointment on later. So here's a man that's been dead 3 days, beaten almost to death before he ever got to the cross, hung on the cross for 6 hours, excruciating pain. He's now got 100 pounds of spices put on him, and they wrap him in a burial cloth. And I'm telling you, he's alive. Do you know the disciples were told what they were talking about was nonsense? They were. We read the story and we just say, oh, okay. It wasn't quite that cut and dry is what I'm trying to tell you. The disciples did not initially believe. The women who followed Jesus did not initially believe. Even though the angel spoke to them, they left there saying, did we just see what we thought we saw? Did we just hear what we thought we heard? Did he really say that? The Roman soldiers did not believe. The religious leaders did not believe. Dead men do not come back to life. Not even Jesus. So you got a little flavor of what's going on here? What I'm trying to get you to see is Thomas ain't no different than we are. And we're no different than he was. We have our unbeliefs too. Particularly when it's something that has got no past history. Particularly when it's something that is so big in our minds and hearts that we don't know how to comprehend it. We don't know how to process it. Now let's look at the story of Thomas, if we may. Just some things about him that I hope it'll help you on your journey of faith and your journey of life. Let's begin by talking about what we don't know. Thomas, there's very little that's known about his life. Many of the disciples, you got a paper trail. You know a little bit about who they were before. You know a little about who they were with. You know about little bit about who they were after. Before Jesus, with Jesus, after Jesus. You got a little bit of details. You can kind of figure out some things. But Thomas was one of those mystery disciples in many ways. Where did he come from? I don't know. What was his occupation? I don't know. Where was his family from? I don't know. Who introduced him to Jesus? I don't know. I know some of you say, Pastor, you're a dummy. I may be, and you're a dummy too. Because nobody knows the answers to those questions, and they've been asked for hundreds of thousands of years by theologians, by Bible study preachers, professors. Nobody knows much about Thomas. They don't know where he came from. They don't really know how he got with Jesus. And we really don't know a whole lot afterwards. But we do know this. He was a twin. And he decided to follow Jesus. Every time Thomas is mentioned, or most every time he's mentioned in the Scriptures, it's referred to that he was a twin. Randy and I have twin sons. We have twin grandsons. Many of you have twins. Was his twin a girl? I don't know. Was his twin a boy? I don't know. Pastor, you don't know a whole lot. You're right, I'm dumb. And so are you. Welcome to the club. We'll get a card to you as soon as we can. Thomas was a twin. And there came a time in his life on the journey when he heard about Jesus, heard of Jesus, heard from Jesus, saw things that Jesus could do, and he decided, I want to follow this man. Every spiritual journey has a starting place. And for Thomas, it began, as ours should, with Jesus. Secondly, Thomas had insights that the other disciples did not have. He had intuition. Maybe it was Holy Spirit intuition. But we know that he had ways of looking at things a little different than the other 11. In John chapter 11, verse 16, Thomas made this statement to Jesus and to the other disciples. John 11:16. So Thomas, called the twin, said to his fellow disciples, let us also go to Jerusalem, that we may die with Jesus. Let us also go to Jerusalem. that we too may die with Him. Jesus had announced to the disciples He was going to Jerusalem for Passover. 11 of them sat there and heard, but didn't think nothing of it. But Thomas did. He said, Jesus, paraphrased, Jesus, do you know if you go to Jerusalem, they're going to kill you? Do you not understand that, Jesus? The religious leaders, the political leaders are going to come together and they're going to accuse you of treason against Rome, blasphemy against Judaism, and they're going to murder you, Jesus. Do not go. But if you're going to go, count me in, because I will die with you. That's doubting Thomas. That's the Thomas that we talk about, the doubting Thomas. But I'm telling you, he was a courageous Thomas. Because none of the other disciples said, well, count us in. There was silence. You could hear the penny drop on the floor. Thomas knew that Jesus would die in Jerusalem, and he said, I'll die with you. We also know in John 14, verses 1 through 5, he not only was a courageous man, but he was a man who was honest. Let's read John 14. Let's read the first 6 verses, well-known verses. Thomas is featured in these verses. Jesus says, let your heart not be troubled. You believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I go to prepare a place for you. And if I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again and receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where I go, you know, and the way you know. Now, Jesus is talking to the disciples. I want to stop right there. He just said that to them. You're reading what he said. And what do you think the other disciples are doing as they're listening to him say that? They're whispering to themselves, what in the world is he talking about? He's talking about going here and going there and going there and going here. He's talking about taking us somewhere. I don't get it. Do you get what he's saying? No, but just be quiet. Don't say nothing. But what's Thomas do? Lord, I got a question, please. I don't mean to interrupt you, Lord, but I got a question. I don't understand what you're saying. That's honesty. Because some of you shake your head when you hear me preach, or Scotty preach, or other preachers preach, but the truth of the matter is, you don't understand the word they said. And Thomas didn't. But he was honest enough to admit it. Lord, I'm confused. Lord, I have fears. Lord, you just gave me a word salad. And I can't figure out what in the world you're saying. Let your heart not be troubled, but you believe in God, believe also in me. In my Father's house are many mansions. If it were not so, I would have told you. I'd go to prepare a place for you. If I go and prepare a place for you, I will come again, receive you to myself, that where I am, there you may be also. And where you go, you know, and the way you know. And Thomas says, I don't understand what you're saying. God respects honesty. And Thomas was honest enough to say to Jesus, I don't get it. Lord, what you're saying is vague. It's a mystery. It's puzzling. It's perplexing. It's confusing. You've lost me. Would you explain it to me, Lord? And so Jesus summarizes it for the sake of Thomas, but I also think he summarizes it for the sake of you and I. Because the truth of the matter is, much of what Jesus said is confusing to us too. And we have the privilege of looking back. They didn't have that privilege. Remember, they were in the moment. Jesus says in verse 6 of John 14 to Thomas and to all the disciples, "You want to know the way? I am the way." Remember what I am means? I am God. I am Yahweh. I am that I am. Jesus is identifying Himself again as being God. I am the way. I am God the way. I am God the truth. I am God the life. No man will go to heaven lest they come through me. No man will go to the Father lest they come through the Son. That's what He was saying. Thomas was a doubter. He struggled with understanding Jesus at times, but he wasn't afraid to say, "Lord, I don't understand. Explain to me what you're saying. I just don't get it." He was a doubter who did not understand. He wasn't a skeptic, as I said earlier. He wasn't a scoffer. He wasn't an infidel. He wasn't an unbeliever. He was an honest man who said, I love you, Lord. I have followed you for 3.5 years, but I can't understand what you're saying sometimes. I don't understand it, Jesus. Explain it to me. There's two kinds of doubters. Doubter number one is the one who says, if you explain something to me and teach me what I'm trying to understand, I will believe. I do not believe now, but I'm open to believe later. Will you teach me? Will you instruct me? Will you explain to me? That's the kind of doubter Thomas was. That's the kind of doubter you and I should be sometimes. But there's another kind of doubter. The one who says, I do not believe. I don't believe a word of it. And I never will believe. There's nothing you can say. There's nothing you can do. There's nothing you can explain to me. There's nothing you can teach to me. I know it all. I've done it all. I don't believe it. And if you want to argue with me about it, I'll argue with you, but I'm not changing my mind. I'm closed-minded. I'm hard-hearted. The religious leaders were that group. And we have their cousins alive today. Many people ask me sometimes, what should I say when the Jehovah's Witnesses come to my door? I've said many times, tell them hi and bye. Because some of us think we're going to be able to convince them that Jesus is Lord because they don't believe it. You're not going to convince them, and you're really being foolish to think you are. They're just there to give you their propaganda. They're there to argue with you. They're not searching for the truth. They're searching for an argument. And if you want to talk to them, that's up to you. I don't waste my time with them. I don't waste my time with the guys on the bicycles, the Mormons who come. They don't believe that Jesus is Lord. They'll say a lot of nice things about Him, but they don't believe He's Lord. Don't fool with them. They're not honest. They don't care about the truth. They care about giving you their ideology and their propaganda. The best thing you can do when people come to your door who's not interested in your truth, but they're trying to give you their truth, is say hi and bye. And show them the road. You be polite, you be mannered, but you show them the door. Because you're not going to convince them because they've already blocked it in their mind and heart. Thomas wasn't one of those kind of doubters. He was a doubter who said, I don't believe, but I'm willing to believe, Lord, if you'll just teach me. And when the Lord taught him, he believed. When the religious leaders were taught, they argued and plotted to kill Jesus to shut him up. Something else about Thomas. In many ways, he was a loner. He was part of a 12-man fraternity, a 12-man brotherhood. But Thomas, although he was part of that, was basically a loner. When Jesus came to the disciples, remember he walked through the door? The disciples were there, but Thomas wasn't. He wasn't there. They would later tell him that Jesus came. And that's where what he said, I wasn't there, I don't know, and unless I see it with my own eyes and feel it with my own hands, I'm not going to believe. But back to where was Thomas at then? The other 11 were together. He's number 12, but where's he at? He's by himself. You find that strange? He preferred to cry alone. He cried his eyes out. He loved Jesus. He had dreams about what Jesus was going to do. He put his life into the hands of this one that was the Messiah. And now the Messiah is dead. And so is his dream and his hopes. And everything that he wanted to him is gone. The Jesus who could work miracles and save others couldn't save himself. And Thomas is by himself as Jesus is with the other 11 disciples, and he's crying. He cried and he cried and he wept by himself. He preferred silence. When some people are grieving and sorrowful, they want music. They want noise. They want conversation. He didn't want any of that. He just wanted the sound of silence. He preferred to try to sort out things himself. He didn't want Peter's help. He didn't want John's help. He didn't want James's help. There's nothing wrong with getting help. He didn't want it right now, though. He just wanted to have time to sort it out. Things have happened so fast for him. I mean, Jesus is alive and now he's dead. We go into Jerusalem and 72 hours later he's on the cross, he's in a tomb. He can't absorb all of that. It's a lot to absorb. He prefers to investigate the sightings of Jesus by himself. He prefers privacy to a crowd. Whenever somebody's grieving, don't impose your way of grieving on them. Respect that people grieve differently. Some people need others around them. Others don't need anybody around them. Others want to have a crying party with others. Some people just like to cry by themselves. Some people like to have somebody figure it all out for them. Other people say, no, if you give me some time, I'll sort it out and figure it out myself. Pastor, who's right when it comes to grieving? Everybody. Who's wrong? Nobody. Just be you. Grieve as you grieve. And we who are watching you grieve, we should respect that grief. Because everybody's different. Thomas was alone, trying to sort it all out as he grieved the death of Jesus. Back in the late 1940s, Youth for Christ was a big organization in America. And it had two of the premier evangelists in that organization. One's name, you probably have heard of before, was Billy Graham. Billy Graham got his start. Evangelist Billy Graham got his start being an evangelist for the Youth for Christ. He was one of their bright and shining stars in the beginning. Also, they had another evangelist who was different than Dr. Graham in style, but just effective as Dr. Graham was in proclaiming the gospel and having people respond to it. His name was Charles Templeton. Well, the time came when Dr. Billy Graham and Charles Templeton had a conversation about the Bible, the Word of God. Dr. Graham said, "I have my doubts about parts of the Bible." Charles Templeton said, "I too have doubts about the Bible." Lots of doubts about the Bible. Dr. Graham said, "I cannot continue to preach the Bible if I do not believe that the Bible is true. And I'm going up to the mountains, and I'm going to spend time alone with God. I'm not bringing anybody with me. I'm going up by myself, and I'm going to spend time with God till I get a word from Him about His Word. Either the Bible's His Word, and I'm going to believe it, and I'm going to preach it, and never doubt it again, or the Bible's not His Word, I'm not going to believe it, I'm going to reject it, and I'll preach something else if I preach it all." He went to the mountains. Charles Templeton went to Princeton University, which was a hotbed of liberalism in that day. Princeton, founded by Christian people, had been hijacked years ago by non-Christian people, religious people who were infidels toward Jesus. And Princeton, back in the late 1940s, attacked the Bible in their classroom. Professors attacked the book of Genesis. Professors attacked the book of Revelation. They attacked the miracles. They attacked the healings. They attacked the truths of the Bible. They ran the Bible into the ground, and Charles Templeton went there and he absorbed their teaching. He would never believe the Bible again. In fact, his last conversation with Dr. Graham on the subject of the Bible was that he rejected the Bible in totality. It was not inspired, it was not inerrant, it was not infallible. He didn't want it, he rejected it, and he went his own way. Charles Templeton never amounted to nothing. And he's probably in hell tonight. Billy Graham, we know what he did. Believing the Bible to be the Word of God, convinced it was the Word of God, he preached it as such. And hundreds of thousands of people have been ushered into the kingdom because of his preaching. But you see, having doubts is not a problem if you resolve the doubts with an open mind and an open heart. But if you have doubts and all you want to do is go to a place to reaffirm those doubts, if you have doubts and all you want to do is go and be with people who do not teach you the truth, but they teach you what you want to hear, that's not good. Billy Graham went with an open mind and open heart. The rest is history. Charles Templeton went with a closed mind, a hard heart. And also the rest is history for him. Thomas has doubts. But notice what he says in verse 28 of John 20. He's going to answer. Let me find it here. And after 8 days, verse 26 of John 20. Look at the words. After 8 days, his disciples were again inside, all 11. And Thomas is now with them, number 12. Jesus comes, the doors being shut. He went right through the door. Went right through the wall. One day, by the way, we'll be able to do that too. We'll be just like Him. So you won't have to knock on my door if you want to come to my house. Just walk right on in. And I don't want you to have to get up to open the door. You can just come right through the door. Please call before you come, though. Jesus came, and the doors being shut, stood in the midst and said, "Peace be to you." Then He said to Thomas, He knew what Thomas had already said earlier, "Reach your finger here and look at my hands. Reach your hand here. Put it into my side. Do not be unbelieving, but believe." You said you would believe if you could see it, if you could feel it. You just have. Thomas answered in his doubts, in his struggles with it all. They've now been resolved. And he said to him, "My Lord and my God." Thomas, in his grief and sorrow alone, worked through his doubts. He sifted through the evidence in his mind. He judged the record in his heart. And he came to a verdict. The Spirit of God brought him to a verdict. Nobody else did. The Spirit of God did. Because he had an open mind and an open heart to the truth. And Jesus said, "I am the truth. Touch me and see. Touch me and see." And he did. And he went from doubting to shouting, and gave one of the greatest affirmations of who Jesus was given in the entire Bible. Think about this. This was a man who doubted. He gets a bad rap for doubting. How many of you knew this is his statement? The doubter had a statement to make when his eyes were open, his mind was open, his heart was open. He said, "Jesus, you're my Lord, and you are my God." And he went on to become one of the great evangelists of the disciples. He would later die for his faith in believing who Jesus was. How about you? Do you have doubts tonight about things of the Bible? Your doubts are okay. Your doubts are not sinful. Your doubts become sinful when you're not looking for the truth concerning those doubts. When you have a closed mind, a hard heart to those truths. Because you've already formed your opinion and you're just looking for somebody to argue with, but also looking for somebody to confirm what you want to believe, not what the Bible teaches. Honesty. Pastor Jim, I don't understand this salvation stuff, but I want it. Pastor Jim, I don't understand the Bible, but I believe it. Pastor Jim, I don't understand all there is about Jesus, but I believe it. I believe who He said He was. You see, honesty with God is the first step in becoming great for God. Heads are bowed and eyes are closed.